All right, hello, welcome everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of season 1 of the Move IQ podcast. Phil Spencer, how are you?
Very good, thank you, Chris.
It's a pleasure to be with
Excited
you.
about this.
Yes, it's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to get stuck in. So, look, you've been in the property game for a good few years now.
Yes, 25, I think.
Yeah,
At
like I
last
said,
count.
a good few years.
Yes.
And I mean, the whole purpose of this show is to really help people understand this landscape better than ever before, because it is quite daunting.
Yes, you're right. It's a minefield.
Preparation is key.
Preparation is key to any successful house hunt, and it's often overlooked. I think people tend to get a bit carried away, and it is exciting going out shopping for houses, the biggest shopping expedition of your life.
I think also it's emotional as well. A lot of it's a big emotional roller coaster, and because of that, we can sometimes not really focus in on the things that we need to be focusing in on, particularly right at the beginning of the journey, right?
Yeah, preparation comes first and foremost,
Yeah.
and I'd start with budget because everything else depends on the budget. That's your fixed point. I describe it as a bit like a jigsaw or a triangle. And so you've got the 3 points of the triangle. The money is the fixed bit because that's the amount that you've got or that's the amount that you're prepared or able to borrow. So that angle is fixed, which leaves area and space are the two other variables.
I think we got a little lucky when we found our place in Cambridge. It took a while to get there, but I feel like we were lucky. The search didn't go on for that long.
Okay.
Why is it, and you've seen this a lot, I know, why is it that some property searches seems to just drag on and on and on forever?
I think a lot of that comes down to how you start. Did somebody prepare their thinking in advance before they went out looking for property? And it's easy to get quite carried away. Think, this is exciting. This is the year we're going to buy a flat or a house. We're going to move. And immediately dash out and start looking at all these wonderful houses without doing the kind of the thorough research and due diligence, if you like, before you go out.
Mortgages are a minefield, right? I mean, this is where I think a lot of people very seriously trip up because they find the house, right? And then they just try and grab the first mortgage they can get their hands on.
I've seen so many people, heard stories. They go out, they find something, they go and talk to their bank and says, yep, they can borrow 250,000 or whatever it is, and so they go shopping for a house. They come up with a house that's 250,000. Great, brilliant. They're happy days. They negotiate the offer. The estate agent then says, "Okay, have you got an agreement in principle? I'd like to see it. Who's going to be lending the money?" And they go, "Oh, crikey, yes, of course." And
Right.
they basically then have to take a very important decision. Which mortgage provider to go for and what deal is right for them in their unique situation. They end up taking that decision in a hurry, in a panic. Kind of, those are big decisions that you want to take away from stressful or emotional times, i.e. you're negotiating a house purchase and it's really tense.
Why do estate agents have such a bad reputation here in the UK?
The honest answer to that, Chris, is I genuinely feel that the majority of people don't understand or appreciate the role that the estate agent plays in the whole housing system.
Okay.
Estate agents are paid by the seller to sell the house in the quickest time possible for the most amount of money.
Right.
They are not paid to provide the buyer with the service. They obviously need buyers in order to sell the house and earn their fee. But at the end of the day, when all's said and done, they don't care about the buyer. Because the buyer is not their client.
So the relationship then is very important to obviously, get in place and to build upon.
The estate agents, yes, they work for the seller, but they are also gatekeepers to the properties and the information about those properties that you as a buyer need.
Right.
So turn up early, turn up on time, bring them a coffee. I mean, do anything.
We've done the legwork here. We've kind of, we've put the time in and all the rest of it. Where do we start with this? And I think probably, actually, let me kick off the conversation with this. There's a difference between viewing a house and viewing a flat.
Well, there is. Only because the house sits on its own piece of ground,
Right.
and it's freehold. A flat is going to be leasehold, so you own the long lease. You don't actually own the ground that the flat sits on. There is a difference in information that you need to understand and to learn as you go through the viewing, but not so much in how you conduct the viewing itself.
What should we be looking for the first time
viewings.
that we walk through the door?
Yeah.
What do we need to be looking for?
Well, it actually begins before you walk through the door. Don't be late. Turn up early. There's nothing that upsets a busy sales agent more than somebody turning up late, because
Agreed,
it puts
right.
the whole day out of sync for them,
Yeah.
and they've got hundreds of appointments. So turn up on time. If you happen to get there nice and early, then use that time. Use that time to look up and down the street. What are the neighbours like? What's the traffic like? What's the parking like? What's the noise like? Have a look at the condition and the exterior of the house that you're about to go and look at. Once you walk through the door, you've really got to switch on. I mean, genuinely, switch on. I have a 10-second rule, because I believe that first impressions, a house and indeed a person only gets one chance to make a first impression.
Absolutely.
The majority of house buying decisions, I believe, are taken in the first 10 seconds you walk in the door.
When we talk about, making an offer here, I guess it probably begins with the asking price, right? Is the asking price always what the property is actually worth?
Very interesting and relevant point, Chris, because an asking price is not a valuation. An asking price is probably a valuation with a bit of ambition and hopes and dreams tagged onto the top to reach the asking price.
Right. How do we reach our own opinions on what the property is actually worth?
Well, if you think a surveyor working on behalf of a bank or building society will at some point be sent round that house. Yes, they're qualified. They're highly qualified people. But how will they assess the value of that house? They will ring round their friendly local agents, and they'll use the internet to conduct their research, and they will compile a file of what they call comparable evidence. And they'll look into similar properties that have sold in a similar market climate, and at what price. And they will use those examples to kind of build a case as to what the house is worth, and then they will advise the mortgage company of that, and the mortgage company then decides whether to lend you the money or not. It's not. I don't want to take anything away from a highly qualified chartered surveyor, but it's not rocket science.
Right.
And you, in theory, can do a lot of that work yourself.
What percentage of people offer the asking price? I mean, you don't always have to negotiate. I guess if you really love something and you want to snap it up quickly, I guess
Yeah.
you just sort of do what you got to do.
Well,
right?
I've done deals like that in a where I think the asking price is perfectly fair and reasonable, and I'm first in the door. And I know that come the weekend, there's going to be another
wanna
six people.
snap it up.
Don't muck about. If you think the ask price is fair, pay the man what he wants, get on with it.
Yeah.
But it could be wildly ambitious. But it's up to you to look after your interests and assess that yourself.
Many years ago when I bought my first property, that word conveyancing came up, and I have to be honest, I didn't have a single clue what it actually meant. I think it's one of those words that gets thrown around quite a bit, and people don't really understand the meaning behind it. So for those tuning in that may be just a little slow, like myself back in the day, what does it actually mean?
Well, the conveyancing process is something that's carried out by a licensed conveyancer or a solicitor, dealing in the transfer of the title deeds, the transfer of ownership from the person who currently owns it to you.
What should we be looking for when it comes to finding a good solicitor at this point in the proceedings?
I would say there's loads of solicitors out there. Recommendations. Ask for recommendations of people that have bought similar properties or in a similar area. There is no harm in asking the estate agent, because the estate agents will be very familiar with who's good and who's less good, who's quick and who's proactive and who's uncommunicative and who's slow.
What happens when things go wrong?
The harsh reality is that things do go wrong in property purchasing. People change their mind. People have a change of heart. Life happens.
Is there anything we can do to avoid it?
My advice is always get the deal done as quickly as you possibly can. The reality is, the longer something takes, the greater the chances that somebody involved through that transaction, or indeed through the whole length of the chain, somebody's personal situation will change. They'll get a new job. They'll fall out with their partner. They'll have a baby. They'll get divorced. Or, stuff happens. Life goes on. And those major changes in life can absolutely have an impact on your decision to buy or to sell a property.
What does it actually mean, right? At this point in the proceeding, break it down for us. What does it mean?
When you are going through the conveyancing process and the transaction and the kind of nitty-gritty, and the lawyers are working with each other or to get a contract in place, an exchange of contracts is exactly that. In actual fact, you don't nowadays have to sign the contract. But once the solicitors are both happy that the contract is in its full and final form, and the mortgage company's happy and the surveyor's happy and everyone's good to go, and the date for completion is agreed throughout the chain, then contracts are exchanged. And that is the first time that the deal is legally binding.
So I think the big question here is, particularly for first-time buyers, they've gone through this entire process and everything. What actually happens on the day of completion?
It's a really special moment. And I say this with all sincerity. It's a moment you'll never repeat, particularly as a first-time buyer.
Of course.
When the deal completes and you get the phone call that the money's through, you can go and pick your keys up.
Nice.
Now, you need to know who's got the keys.
Well, ideally, if you want to pick them up, I can see that being an issue. Right?
Is it the solicitor? Is it the estate agent? Or is it the person, the owner, the person that you're buying from? Go and pick the keys up and buy a bottle of champagne and go round and open that door and treasure that moment. You step across the threshold. You have just bought your own little bit of the world.
We hope that this podcast has brought you the clarity and the confidence to go ahead and move forward with buying that first home, particularly for our first home buyers. And it was a lot of fun to spend time with you.
I've enjoyed it too, Chris. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Hope you find it useful. Good luck out there.